Righty, hello everybody. So here we are for Fargone Racing GT Challenge Season 18 here, and we are at round 2 for Kyalami. So it was wet in practice, but it is dry and optimum conditions out there right now, but the track is quite hot with 23 degree ambience, 30 degree track. We have a lot of quick guys out here tonight. A lot of Fords, a lot of McLarens, but you have some other oddballs there in the mix, and the question is, who is going to be the best at tackling such a magnificent circuit? It is super tricky to hook up a lap, but when you do, you feel like a legend. So we are here for 70-minute race. It is an enduro round for the second round, but first we have to negotiate what is a 12-minute qualifying session with only about 10.5 minutes to go. So right now we are looking at Longy, who is in a pink and black Ford Mustang, and I think this will be one of the cars you expect to see a lot of tonight. Same with the McLaren, and just looking at the practice session, we're looking to see Steve Reese and Maddie at the front of the field. So those are the main people I would be keeping an eye on. Other names of note, I'm not actually sure because I haven't commentated here before. So hello everybody, I am Lindsay Model, and I love to commentate ACC, F1, whatever I can get my hands on. And yeah, when I was given the opportunity to commentate here in Fargone, I was not going to say no. So it is a beautiful Tuesday night here, and now we get ready to watch our first qualifying lap off board with Longy in the Ford Mustang, flying down the straight. This is where they are the strongest in that big V8 car. They fly down the straights and now into the braking zone at turn 1, tip it across, and then now flat out through this right, just about the car fighting you as you now head onto the tricky braking zone and tip it left into barbecue, and then get on the throttle very nice and early. And pretty much the gist you need to get is if you're on the throttle in the Mustang, you're gaining time over every other car except maybe the Nissan. So that is something we'll see, especially in the race when it comes to overtaking. So now dipping it down through this long left-hander and taking a dive now down into the S's. So through the left, down the hill, to the right. You should just be able to pin it flat if you get to the first left apex right, but it takes a very committed driver and a very good run through the corner. So now into the hairpin, braking, late apex, and you got to pick up the throttle super early to open up this apex exit. It is very tricky to get that one right and to judge your car, but now you head through the compression flat out. You'll feel a massive bump and jerk if you have a force feedback wheel, and the car will try to fight you as you now go heavy on the brakes into the very slow tricky right-hander, and now tracing the white line and into this corner where you can make or break your lap. If you hit that curb on the inside, you will fly off into the gravel trap, and potentially even worse. It is very unsettling. It does not matter if you're in a Mercedes, a Mustang, a Bentley, or a Ferrari, you'll go flying either way. So here we go, first lap in qualifying session goes P1 with a 1 minute 43.810 is our first lap time to kick off the session. Maddie 45.0 in a little bit of traffic, so we'll now look at Maddie on the first full hot lap. We'll go into first person here as she's just fighting the car and through the right, and then just hold it second gear. The car gets a bit unstable under braking. It doesn't look like the Mustang's having too much problems with it, just soaring at the wheel on the exit, trying to keep that big V8 under containment as you get onto the throttle, as now flat into the apex and then a dab of the brakes in the mid corner. We'll see some drivers take that a little bit differently. It all depends on the driver as to how you end up taking these high speed corners. Down to first gear for the Mustang, and just a bit of a wobble on the exit as you now dip down into the S, get it to that left hand side curb, and then flat out, bit of a lift because of the wobble on the middle apex, and just keep it committed as you come over the blind crest into the braking zone. Super tricky to get right, but then you're back on the power, back on your way around the circuit to keep it hooked up around this lap. Kyalami forever is going to bring up challenges, and you will see mistakes, especially into this braking zone. A lot of drivers overshoot. As now down into first gear, get it across with that apex, and then just again tracing the concrete. And then you got to be super committed. You can't be scared of that inside curb, but you still have to be cautious at the same time. Maddie nails it as she rounds the final corner down to first gear, braking at the Marshall post on the right hand side and on the throttle. What is this lap time going to be for Maddie? It is going to be a 1 minute 40.770 for the Mustang. So that is a great start to Maddie's qualifying efforts, as we'll now look at, who do I want to look at? We'll now look at Speed Racer, who rounds the final corner to finish a lap, I believe. 43.4 was their last best. Now it's a 42.3. So that is not a bad lap from the McLaren whatsoever, putting him P6 for the moment. We'll now move down to Dave Ross, who's heading through turn 1. Once again, another Mustang driver. 44.697 is his current best lap time. He'll be looking to find some time as he heads through the race. Oh, not through the race, through this qualifying session and into the race. So through barbecue, and then now dive down the hill. Tricky, fast right-hander. You need a lot of downforce, which GT3 cars only have a little bit, so you got to be really committed, just not using all the track on the outside there, just playing this safe, making sure that he can get the lap done. As now dip down the hill, the S section, very tricky part here at Kyalami, one of my personal favorites. I am a very big fan of this track, so you might hear me just have some nice words about it as we go on through the race, but yeah, I love racing around here, and I'm sure most of these guys do as well. I know Mark Witchell in that GTR won't be liking driving the car around here, but will be liking the track. I know Mark's a pretty reasonable fan here at Kyalami. So flat out through the compression for Dave Ross, and then heavy on the brakes. The Mustang's brakes are reasonable, so you will be able to pull up quite nicely as you now round up the hill. Just dab of the brakes. For some drivers, it'll just be a lift, and there we go. The first victim of the fast right-hander is Dave Ross, hitting the inside curb, spinning to the right, and then spinning off to the left, trying to save it into the concrete wall. So that's going to be some damage to that Mustang, as we now look to Ken Blocks as he rounds the final corner in a very nice silvery chrome Ford Mustang, green aux lights just underneath, but across the line, 42.2 P7 for Blocks at this current stage. As we now look, Steve Reese, who right now has a 40.885, and that is only P3. That is the pace of this grid. Longy is at the front right now, followed by Maddie, then Steve, who is now just going to come out for his outlap for his final run here in this qualifying session. It is now crunch time for all the front runners here, as Hoggy now is heading through the final sector on the brakes in the 296. One of the only Ferraris on the grid tonight. There's only 2 of them. So what is normally a very popular car in the ACC scene, we only see 2 of them here at Kyalami, but it is a nice car around this track, pushing to the absolute limit. Is Hoggy braking on the outside curb, get it tipped across to the apex. The cars like to understeer through here, but now on the throttle and to the line Hoggy goes. What's the lap time going to be? It's going to be a 1 minute 41.0, still P4, nothing quite enough to match Steve right in front of them, but P4 is still not a bad effort as we now look to Longy, who's just began a second last lap, I would assume, in this qualifying session. Heavy on the brakes at the 100 meter board, as I'll give you a pure onboard here, no comms for a moment, and just pure cockpit onboard. So it's been a very committed lap for Longies. They round the final corner for what will be their penultimate lap in this qualifying session. Will it be an improvement on their previous best as they cross the line of 40.767 is their PB. They only do a 40.9, so they only have one more shot to get this right, or else it'll be the end of their qualifying improvement efforts. But nonetheless, it will be a good start. Maddie in the final sector on the grass on the entry. That's how much of the track they are trying to use. As now the final corner to go. Will Maddie improve on their 7.70 at this moment, or will they have to also go for one last lap to try and beat to Longy to P1? No, a 40.457 from Maddie to put it on provisional pole position with still one more lap in their qualifying session to go. So that is a very impressive lap. Ken blocks to the line, does a 1 minute 42.8. It is not an improvement on their previous best, as we now look to Gunther Rowe, who does not improve with a 42.2 but still has a lap to go. Mark Witchell here in this very nice red, black and blue Nissan GTR is on a 42.350. But we will look at that as we are on the grid. We want to be focusing... Oh, as Maddie has returned to the pit lane, we want to be focusing on Steve Rees, who is coming to the line right now. Will he be able to snatch pole position off of Maddie as he comes to the line? No, it's not going to be an improvement of 41.0, but this is now going to be one final effort here for Steve Rees. We'll go on board and we'll get the telemetry up as Steve has one final push to try and get pole position in this qualifying session. He's already a 10th up here, nearly 2 tenths up as they head into barbecue. The McLaren is going to be very stable through this section of the racetrack. So it's been a good effort already through the first sector, a 10th up as they now head down the hill, 4th gear, flick it in under braking and back on the throttle as early as you like. A good exit there for Steve, puts him nearly 2 tenths up as he heads now through the very tricky left-hander, is now nearly 3 tenths up on his previous best. Now the S's use all the curb on the entry to get the car tipped across and then keep it pinned to the floor here in this McLaren. 3 tenths up. This isn't quite enough. I think he needs a couple more hundreds if he's going to take pole off of Maddie here, but Maddie thought her efforts were enough, but through the hairpin, Steve's had a really good run. Is 3.5 tenths up, but and fading though. It wasn't a great exit for the McLaren. The time is going to even back out as they head through the compression. Big bump there, you can see fighting away at the wheel just a slight bit, braking just on the 100-meter board, or just a bit after, depending on how brave Steve was. Very brave as he now gets on the throttle. It's a 4/10 improvement currently. Now the hardest corner, the scariest corner of the racetrack. Steve nails it to perfection. It's 4 tenths up as he heads into the final corner. This could be your pole position lap, everybody, as now it's nearly a 4.5 tenth improvement. Will this be pole for Steve Rees as he heads through the line? It is going to be P2, and it's only 100th off of Maddie, and he gave it his all, and it wasn't quite enough, but a P2, and it's fine margins between P1 and P2. So that was a very close ending to your qualifying session, but Maddie is the one who snatches pole in a Ford Mustang. So that is a very, very close ending to your qualifying session. Maddie, followed by Stephen Rees, only a 100th behind. Then you have Longy, a 10th behind that. Then you have Poggy, Eda Nick, Rowe, Perkins, Demon Boost, Speed Racer, Blocks rounds out your top 10. Then you have Mark Witchell, a solid effort for someone in a Nissan GTR. Then you have Toba Sire in P12. Then you have Parker, Crusoe, MJ, Fleischman, I want to say, Swooper, Exiled Reaper, Ross, and Mark H rounds your grid off. So that was a very, very competitive start to your night of racing. We now have an hour and 10 minutes, better known as 70 minutes race here. And that was quite the impressive beginning to the night's proceedings as we now go to your free camera and we'll look through the liveries we have on the grid. So Maddie with the Zoomies pink and blue Ford Mustang, very nice and pretty funny if you look at some of these pictures of the cat. And then you have Steve Rees himself, white and black 6 McLaren, couple of logos on it, Fanatec, Castrol being the main ones with Puma featuring there as well. Now we look at the pink and black Eagle Ford Mustang. Pretty standard stuff for a Mustang. Then you have a Nail Cigarettes livery for Ferrari carrying number 42. Then looking further back to the BMW, Fargone Racing BMW, purple and red with Shell sponsorship. A very nice looking livery, but this is my personal favorite on the grid. A nice little nod to the Focus RS RX that used to race in Rallycross Ken Block livery here on the Ford Mustang Monster Energy Autobahn. All the names under the sun. Very beautiful livery, and I love it, and that would be my livery of the week. So now we look to the 33 Max Verstappen livery, I would assume, being orange and black. Maybe I'm interpreting that the wrong way. Track Racer, and a couple of other sponsors here and there. As drivers starting their engines, as now it is 16 seconds to the grid. So then you have this blue and black and maroon-ish, or dark red, whatever you want to call it, McLaren. Then you have the Valentino Rossi sort of livery with 46 on it. Fargone Racing, Samsung, the Doctor. So yeah, definitely a Valentino Rossi. Then you have the silvery grey and black Ford Mustang. Mark Witchell 74 Nissan, which we already looked at. A West McLaren livery, and oh, I'm getting sucked away. That's not me doing that. It's good, Steve. Alright, anyway, we'll now go to the broadcast cameras as we get ready to go racing here in Kyalami for round 2 of GT Challenge Season 18. Hour and 10 minutes to go. Maddie and Steve starting alongside each other here for the start of the races. Oh no, come on, give me who I want. I guess not. But anyway, as we come towards the line, Maddie leading the way, and now we have green flag racing here in Kyalami, and it's going to be Maddie versus Steve as they head down to the first corner. Steve inching ahead, but now as they head towards the top end of their straight line speed, it has been a very good start for Maddie, but Steve trying it the long way round here in the McLaren. Will he be able to get the exit off the corner? He has his nose in for the next portion. Maddie giving the squeeze to Steve, and they managed to keep out of contact's way for the moment, but Steve still putting the pressure on, but they are already ahead of the P3 and P4 cars by a little margin, as Hoggy taking P3 after a very nice start, getting past Longy, who was in P3. So the Mustang falling back, and the BMW of Eda Nick holding position while being under pressure from Gunther Rowe. And the Mustang not able to get anything done down in turn 1. Mark Witchell, though, looking for a move here on the McLaren Speed Racer as they head over the hill into the left-hander. Mark wasn't able to get that one done, but he was able to stay ahead of the orange and black Aston Martin of James Parker, who had a reasonable getaway, just held station, I believe, I'm remembering qualifying correctly, as we now go back up to Mark Witchell as he's looking for a move here, as there's a lot of moves going on actually. He wasn't able to get anything done, but further back I feel like I saw some absolute chaos happening. There was the Caterpillar Mustang and the red and white Aston Martin of Swooper make contact, and that is our first half spin of the race, but no major incidents from my understanding just yet. But as we are looking up the hill here, Mark is looking very much for a move as MJ trying to make a move in the Honda NSX on the inside of the Lamborghini of Fleischmann, isn't able to get that one done. Here comes the Mustang of Dave Ross as they head through the right-hander. This is a very, very brave maneuver, but down the inside goes the Mustang, getting that one done, and now MJ's going to be under pressure from Mark H, who is also now hunting a move. Dave Ross is leading this little battle pack here in the Ford Mustang, as you now look back to MJ, who has just been dropping, it seems like, but the NSX isn't done just yet, not able to get up the inside. And now the Aston Martin of Swooper trying the long way round, has a massive snap off camber nature of that corner, causing some issues for the Aston Martin. As what have I done? I've done something. I've accidentally hidden the leaderboard. No, guys, what have I done? Hold on. Yeah, there we go. Alright. So we now move to Maddie leading the way already in this race. So it's been a very solid start. 47-1 is your first lap, and Steve already dropping back just a little bit. So now we go to Hoggy versus Steve potentially. No, it is going to be Hoggy versus Longy here. They are fairly close together. It'd be nice if the leaderboard would give us some deltas here, but it doesn't. I don't think it wants to. And a reasonably clean start here in Kyalami. The first 4 minutes of this race nearly completed as we move further back down the order. See if we can find any little bit of action. James Parker versus Speed Racer, looking like it could rage on in a couple of moments' time as we head through the fast right-hander on the brakes here, rounding the final corner to end your second lap. The track has dropped a couple of degrees since qualifying, but the ambient actually has gone up a degree if I'm not mistaken, but I might be misremembering. We're actually going to move back up here as Ken Box is going for a move on Demon Boost. So the Mustang using its legs in a straight line to get up alongside, but can he get it done under braking here on the McLaren? We know the outside is very slippery, but around the outside of the second corner and braking into barbecue, Ken Blocks gets a really nice move done, and now James Parker fancies a move at it as well. So they head up the hill into the left-handers, and that is Demon Boost losing out 2 positions simultaneously from 1 move as we now look at Speed Racer, who could be considering a move and is going to try and move all the way around the outside as they head down the hill. Mark Witchell in the Nissan GTR is now going to get involved as they head up the hill into the left-hander. Mark doesn't have the cornering to get it done around the outside. He knows that. He will continue his patience. So a couple of moves being made on the brink of the top 10. It looks like Speed Racer is going to inherit P11 after all the dust has settled. Demon Boost rounding your top 10 for the moment, as we are just going to go into a nice little helicam to get a nice overview of the racing here. And I'm wondering why the Delta doesn't want to show up on the leaderboard. The gaps are pretty important for me, but Mark Witchell though doesn't care about the gap because he's about to go past 2 McLarens in one go. He goes up the inside of Demon Boost as well. Can't quite get that one done, as that was nearly a very, very brilliant move there from Mark Witchell. Nearly a very brilliant double move, but it was a really good move that he just made on Speed Racer. And now as we head onto the straight, this is where the Nissan is at its best. This is where the Nissan can fight any other car, including the Mustang. So as we head onto the straight, Mark Witchell is going to be hunting a move here on Demon Boost after he cleared Speed Racer. The GTR is clawing in and clawing in and clawing in. Will Mark go to the inside? He dummies it, or just pokes his nose in. Doesn't go for it though, so he is considering a move. He's just got to pick a sensible place to do it, and that is what I found over the years, or a year and a bit, that Mark is very good at doing, as I do see him in other places. But yeah, Mark is a very sensible person, as the ambient and track are just dropping a bit. It looks like a cloud is coming over the track here in Kyalami. 29 degrees. We started qualifying at 32, so the drops are happening. It was 23 at the beginning of this race, ambient temperature, and now it is back down to 22, which is where qualifying started, if I'm not mistaken. So a pretty reasonable decline in temperature, and as the cloud continues to cover the track, we could see a little bit more of that. So we are looking at Longy right now, who is chasing behind Hoggy. So we'll actually go to Hoggy so we can see the overall view of this fight. But as we head through the right, just a bit of grass caught on entry there, but I'd expect to see more grass found on the exit, actually, with the way the inside curb is there. Is Steve not able to, like, he's staying close to Maddie there, you can see it, but it isn't quite overtaking range. But Longy further back for the P3 fight is in a Mustang versus a Ferrari, so we could see a nice little battle here erupt soon, as Maddie just controlling the pace out the front. You have to do a bit of fuel saving in the McLaren and the Ford to get through this entire 70-minute proceeding without any problems. So unlike the Ferrari, you just can't put and the BMW and other cars up and down the grid, you cannot just go the whole way pushing, except for when your tires start to fall off. You have to fuel save, and that's what the 2 leaders and the rest of the Mustangs and McLarens are thinking about at this very moment. When am I going to choose to save fuel? But it won't be now, but there is no mandatory stop in this race, so they are just going to push and push to the end, and any gaps that form will stay formed. Unless you get damaged, we shouldn't see anybody making a trip into the pit lane, as I am still baffled as to why the gaps aren't coming up. But I will just keep an eye using the track map, as there is a yellow flag, the 906 car, that is Chriso in the Lambo gets going again, as we will just jump into the replay and see what that is for. Change camera. 906. So this is the Lamborghini driver heading down into turn 1. Yeah, with the helicam, so we are just taking a look here. Rounding through barbecue, just gets it crossed up under braking, but keeps it together, but then in the mid-corner, just looping it around, so not how you want to be going here at Kyalami, and that is what caused our yellow flag, so the Lamborghini of Chriso not having a fun time here, but we will maintain focused here. This battle between Hoggy and Longy is just heating up a little bit. You can just see that gap closing just a little bit, ever so slightly, whenever I blink, so definitely we can see this continue to heat up as we head through the 70 minutes. This is all about managing pace, and with Longy having to save fuel at some point, probably later on, this fight could, even if it stretches out a little bit, could come back in. So we'll have to see. So Hoggy just pushing along as we now see Chriso into the pit lane. As I was saying, cars that end up getting damaged are the ones we'll see into the pit lane. Other than that, we shouldn't be seeing anyone in the pit lane, but we will take our eyes off this fight now. Just continue to move further down. Gunther Rowe getting pretty close behind Ida Nick, but it's another sort of battle when it's kind of going to stay a bit stagnant, as is a lot of the field currently, just stretching out a little bit. So honestly, I think we're just going to stay with Ida Nick versus Gunther Rowe at this very moment as we head through the fast right. As I do have a track map to learn all the corner names, and normally I have it up permanently, but because of the way I have a new setup and I'm still having some teething problems, so I am commentating through my OBS preview screen. But I will just grab my phone up so I can be a bit more creative than just the fast right-hander. So down into turn 1 of Crowthorne we go. Ida Nick still holding the position in front of Gunther Rowe, currently working out for him. So we now head into barbecue. As I've said a few times, it's the one corner name that really stuck out to me, but now one of the trickier corners on the track. Not the trickiest, but a tricky corner. You have to have full commitment through Sunset here, and the BMW definitely not at its best around this track. This goes against what it's really known for. It's a stable and consistent car, but it's not the best around high speed or slow speed corners, so the Mustang will be all over the back of it at the high speed. Even though the Mustang isn't a fan of corners itself, high speed is normally where it's a bit better. Slow speed is where it's a bit of a donkey. But as we head up the hill into the hairpin, Ida Nick just got to manage pace. The Beamer can stay ahead of this Mustang if he works hard enough for it, as we've seen. But Gunther Rowe still continuing to put the pressure on. You see the rain light on the back there flashing away for some reason. Not sure why. So, fun fact time, as the race is a little bit stagnant right now. The track was designed, so Kyalami obviously, the track was designed in the mid-1950s by a pair of teenagers, and then was designed and funded and then raced with its first major international event back in 1961. So this track is very old, and a highlight of it is obviously hosting the Formula 1 Grand Prix all the way up until 1985, where politics then were a bit interesting and the Grand Prix had to stop, and we haven't seen it back in F1 since, but a push for it recently has been coming around. Has 16 corners and is 4.5 kilometers, or to be exact 4.529 kilometers, which for people who, if you are watching and you don't use the metric system, what are you doing, unless you're an American watching this race, is 2.814 miles. And the lap record, surprisingly to me actually, as the Audi isn't normally that quick in real life, is a 1 minute 41.425 set by South African Michael Stephen in an Audi R8 LMS GT3 during the 2023 Festival of Motoring LMS. So that is actually all that I have. I normally have a little bit more than that, but there's actually not too much to this track. It's actually a pretty simple history, unlike tracks like Silverstone or Spa or a number of any other circuits. There's a little bit more, but it's pretty in-depth, and you don't want to listen to me ramble about the specifics, I'm sure. So, we'll move battles, as we've been sticking with that one for a little while and stayed stagnant. We'll move back to, or move up to, the Longy Hoggy fight again. Longy is looking a bit closer than when we were watching them earlier, so as they head round the final corner of, I'm not even going to try and say that, but actually I'll give it a go. Ingwe, I don't know. I'm not going to say it again, but if you know in chat, give me a thumbs up if I said it right. If not, call me an idiot. But Longy, as we head into barbecue, is not able to make any moves, as we will look up to the leader here, or the P2 car chasing the leader, and Steve Reese wasn't able to make any moves just yet, and well, it's not even really close enough. But he is just staying in the zone, so when they start fuel saving, if he is just a bit quicker during fuel saving, that could be interesting, as we're going to jump our way down the field and see if we can find anything interesting going on. It looks like Fleischmann could be in a little battle here. It would help if the ACC cameras wanted to work properly. Fleischmann versus Tobasaya. No, Fleischmann. No. What am I watching? It's Fleischmann versus MJ. I think that could be a lap situation, potentially, then. Hold on. Yeah, MJ is in P19, so the Honda NSX must have bit at some point. But it is a little bit of a train here, and maybe MJ will cause a bit of carnage. Hopefully not, though, as we don't want to see any disruptions to what could be some nice racing action. As Mark Witchell, back up to Mark Witchell, is just jumping around on the leaderboard, fighting James Parker. They'll stay with these two, as the GTR are very rapid in a straight line, but the Aston Martin is not a slouch by any means either. So this could be interesting. Mark Witchell dives into the pit lane. Oh no. Why is he having to dive into the pit lane when you don't have to pit in this race? I wonder. Hold on. Let's pull up a replay. Because I was wondering why he was jumping around the leaderboard so much. Where's Mark? Here's Mark. Anything happen at all? I'm just a bit confused as to why he would be pitting unless he's forgot to fuel his car properly. So, down through the compression mine shaft. No, nothing happening. It heads into crocodiles. So, I'm not actually sure why Mark's had to pit here. There's nothing really happening, so just a bit of an oddity here from Mark Witchell, maybe some technical problems, not supporting his case. But Steve is actually looking very close behind Matty, closer than he has in prior laps, so this could be an interesting one, the lead fight potentially going on. So as we head up the hill and through Cheetah, Matty looking very quick, but Steve is now right there. So this is the closest these two have been since the start, but this is where the Mustang is strong. This is where the Mustang gains its time in a straight line, and sometimes the McLaren even struggles to gain in a slipstream. So will Steve be able to get a move down into turn one? No, it's very unlikely, as Matty has actually gained a bit of time, but 41.8 with a PV of 41.5 is brilliant, brilliant race pace from the Mustang and from Steve Reese. So these two really pushing each other to the limit. Obviously quite far off their quality times, but that, what do you expect when you're having to save a little bit of fuel and you're just trying to survive a race as well? It always happens. The pace is always a little bit off qualifying, as is the effect of having little fuel. But I've missed it. After all this time of looking at it, I've missed Longy getting past Hoggy. I am terrible at camera direction. Well, no, I'm not terrible at camera direction. I'm terrible when I don't have a delta anywhere. It's so annoying. ACC, please help. Hold on. Let me... Okay, let me... Sorry, I've missed it. No, I've gone past him. Help. Why can I not see? Sorry, I shouldn't having to be look at this on stream, but I'm just wondering. V. No. Maybe it was from what I did earlier. I did something with the numpad and it made it all disappear. There we go. Oh, I fixed it. Okay. There we go! Alright. This is what I've been waiting for. Haha. The deltas. It's all because I pressed the wrong button at one point and I couldn't get it to come back. Alright. Now we can keep an eye on the battles. So, closest battle on track right now. Where is it? It is the two leaders who are actually closest to each other right now. So, nice little helicam. Can never do any wrong. Maddie and Steve Reese still just pushing each other along. The 41 something on the last lap there for Steve Reese. I just about missed it, but yes, I agree. Tash in chat. Yay, deltas. I have missed probably a good couple of battles because we had no deltas, but thus is the effect when I haven't been commentating on ACC that long, but especially I haven't been broadcasting on ACC. This is my second ever time broadcasting an ACC race, and like my 6th or 7th commentary race here, but comms isn't the hard part. Actually, I found on ACC that broadcasting ends up being the hard part, but I am learning and I am here, and I think Fargone is happy to have me. I guess I'll find out afterwards, I guess. But now we are 20 minutes in to this 70-minute race, so we have 49 minutes to go, and that is yellow flag. Car number 5. Who is car number 5? It is MJ, who's had another little moment, so we'll go dive into the... well, we won't dive into the replays just yet. We'll dive to the replays in a second. Steve's looking quite close, as 41.6 was his last effort, and now to the line of 42.4, so actually a bit slower on that lap. These two fuel saving potentially at the same time, 7/10 between them. So now we will go to the replay of MJ, who is car number 5. Car number 5. Skip 5 seconds. Skip 5 seconds again, because I know it's later on and all that. There we go. Is that a technical fault? Let's see. Heading into sunset. Turning in. Oh, just straight and stop. Yeah, looks like a technical issue there, probably wheel related for MJ, so not what you want to be seeing, but they happen in real life, and in real life racing, and they happen on the sim as well. Not as often, because, you know, at least I'd like to hope your wheelbase doesn't set on fire, but I don't know, I guess sometimes it might. Maybe that's what happened to MJ, although I hope not. But yeah, technical failures, very frustrating, very annoying, but just got to deal with them sometimes. Hoggy and Longy continue to scrap away at it. The Mustang strolling with the brakes there in the mid-corner, just flickering on and off them. Hoggy very close behind the gap. Only a couple of tenths, and probably getting a little bit closer as we're going to use set 2 here for the first time, as that we head into Crocodiles. Just tipping it through the right. Thank you, Tash. But now up the hill through Cheetah, through the right. Hoggy making a mistake there, and the Ferrari luckily not biting him for getting on the grass, but probably not able to chase now as they head down the straight. This little right hand kink you see that is not a corner in any car, is actually classified as turn 1. So the turn 1 we are looking at now isn't actually turn 1, it is turn 2. That's another factor I remember as they head through Crowthorne. And then the right hand kink is called something I'm not going to dare to try and pronounce, because I don't want to end up getting myself assassinated. I don't know. I just don't want to look like an idiot. As we now head down the field, just trying to find another battle here. Lee Perkins, actually, is looking quite close behind Demon Boost, so Ferrari versus McLaren potentially could be a reasonable fight. They are similarly laid out cars, both mid/rear engine I mean, one is made in Britain, one is made in the UK, but both are pretty short front end with a bit of a longer back end, but the McLaren a lot longer of a back end. But yeah, they drive pretty similarly actually at the end of the day. So the McLaren is normally just a bit faster on raw pace, but the Ferrari is normally a bit more stable. So we'll see what wins out in this specific fight. Is just looking at the leaderboard there. Longy and Hoggy, 4 cents apart. That is your current closest battle on the track. I am still just going to stay here with Lee Perkins. We have looked at Hoggy and Longy and Noel a lot, so a little bit of time off the camera couldn't hurt, as the McLaren there is a wide Demon Boost, managing his tyres, maybe just getting it wrong under braking while thinking about other things. The McLaren and the Ferrari both bouncing away through the compression as they head now into the Crocodiles, as through the hairpin. McLaren defending thin air there, as I don't think the Ferrari really would have gone for it, but now Lee Perkins is right up behind Demon Boost as they head up the hill through the right. The McLaren has made the biggest mistake he can make at this track, and flying off the track goes Demon Boost, and that was a huge moment, and that is what I was talking about in qualifying. The inside curb biting someone right where it hurts and bouncing him off the track, and that is going to now put him into the pathway of Exiled Reaper. But I don't think Exiled will be close enough to make an attempt, but that is a very, very big moment in Demon Boost race, and losing out to top 10 for sure. But 45 minutes still left to chase, 12 seconds behind Lee Perkins. It's not impossible, but considering those two were lapping similar times, it definitely will be very hard, as Tobasaya here is very close behind Fleischmann. So this little pack of 3 of Exiled Reaper, Fleischmann and Tobasaya is heating up as they now head into Barbecue, the tricky braking zone. Tricky mid-corner actually, as it goes off camber as you come over the hill. The car gets very light and it doesn't like you very much, but cars like the McLaren normally handle it fairly well. Same with the Lamborghini, which is normally very, very planted in the corners, but it has no straight line speed. But Tobasaya very, very close, and that is a beautiful West McLaren livery, I must say. It's always one of my higher rated F1 liveries from the 90s and earlier 2000s, and now it's made its way into ACC on a McLaren 720 SGT3 Evo, so looking very nice indeed. I might take inspiration myself. But now as they head down the hill towards Crocodiles, obviously this is the compression. Tobasaya just losing a bit of ground, but Fleischmann gaining a bit of ground on Exiled Reaper. This is obviously where the Nissan would be at its weakest. But as they head over the hill, the Nissan very understeery slide there at the mid corner. But then as they head onto the straight, there's going to be absolutely no chance Fleischmann can get a move done. And if you want to get it done on a Nissan and a Lamborghini, you have to do it through a corner. So he's going to have to pick his moment to go for it at some point if he is planning on making a move and not just sitting behind. But this 3-car train staying stagnant for the moment, as we're going to move up to Gunther Rowe versus Ida Nick, as they've been battling all race long pretty much, as we are now nearly 30 minutes into this race. But no moves have been made. But Gunther Rowe closer than he has been on previous attempts, nearly 3 tenths between the two of them. BMW versus Mustang. Yeah, the BMW is a bit better well, it isn't better in a straight line than a Mustang, but it is a bit better in a straight line than you see when it's against other cars. So the Mustang is going to have to work a little bit harder to make a move. But Gunther Rowe looking very punchy as they head through Cheetah. Gets the car rotated in very nicely and is looking comfortable as they head into the final corner. If he gets a good exit, we could see a swap for the P5 positions. So down through the flat out turn 1, which is just a kink into the straight, and towards the corner. Will Gunther Rowe go for it? He pulls to the left hand side and just sticks his nose in. The BMW actually making a little bit of a mistake there as they turn towards the apex, but not a committed move under braking there from Gunther. Just trying to pull the dummy, trying to force Ida Nick into a mistake. It's the only way he thinks he can get this move done. And a little bit wide there from both of them. kicking up some grass dust or dirt more, which is what a normal person would say, but I am apparently not a normal person, so good stuff. But down through Sunset and then into Clubhouse Corner, I believe it's called. Oh, Clubhouse Bend. And now through the S's. This is where the BMW will be a bit stronger than the Mustang. It's a bit of a 50-50 split between these two cars around the track, because you have the big straight and all the acceleration zones, which is where the Mustang will be stronger, as I've said a few times, against any car. But then you have the high-speed corners where the Beamer and the Mustang will be honestly pretty similar, but then medium to low-speed sections of the track is where the BMW excels, and that's where you can see the true difference between the cars and the drivers, as that is where you have to wrangle the car around the track as a Mustang, whereas you can drive it pretty smoothly in a Beamer. Through Cheetah they go. The Mustang again just looking very confident when they flick it in there, and looking as if they could close in and make a move on the BMW at any point. But then we head onto the straight in the slipstream. Gunther Rowe gets close, and I just not close enough to make a late braking maneuver. But as we head down to turn 1, BMW thought about defending thin air and just returned to the racing line, and we will now shift away from this battle to go back to Hoggy versus Longy, which has already had quite a bit of screen time. It's only just under 4 tenths between the two of them. Now it is just over 4 tenths, and the Ferrari now is the chaser, as we established a few minutes ago. But we are now 30 minutes into this race with another 40 to go, so just over halfway left in this race. As we will now give it I will now give it a pure onboard between these two, just so you get a little look at what this Ferrari is having to do with its steering wheel to get it around the corners. Go. That is your third sector all the way to turn 1 there, on board with the Ferrari, and a solid effort there from Hoggy to try and chase it down. But actually, what I haven't noticed in the meantime is Stephen Rees has gotten very close behind Matty. This is probably one of the closest scenarios between the two, and just look how confident that McLaren is, and compared to how almost jagged on the edge it looks like Matty is. And that's just because the McLaren is better through all sorts of corners. So Steve has the upper hand through this sector, but then as we head towards the third, the Mustang will come into its own for just a couple of the corners. But Steve currently holding the fastest lap of the race. Not sure what that is. We'll find out when they head towards the line and we get the update on their best and last lap. But now through the hairpin, Matty goes very tight, and a different line, a line choice difference between the two drivers can also result in some different results through the final sector. But there we go, all the way through the left-hand side there from Matty, who is really wringing the neck out of that Mustang. Steve makes a bit of a mistake there, and now the gap is just going to creep over 5 tenths, I think we'll find, when they head to the line. But through Sunset, not through Sunset, through Cheetah, Steve is not going to be close enough to make a move, I don't think, as he rounds the final corner. What was his best lap time? What is the fastest lap of this race? It is a 1 minute 41.5 with a 42.3 being his last lap of 41.5. Absolutely rapid there from the McLaren. He's just poking his nose out, trying to make Matty fall into a mistake, as we're going to go back to Hoggy versus Longy. They're not close enough to make any moves, and further down there's a couple of close people, but not closer than these people up the front. We are just going to stay with this lead battle for a couple of minutes as we'll go back to set 1. We haven't had this little set of cameras for a little while, and we'll actually go on board, I think. That'll be nice. looking here with the McLaren soaring away at the wheel. You actually get a little bit of pedal there in the background as well. It's not precise, I would assume, but you just get to see when he's getting on the brakes and how quickly he's stomping on the power, just on and off them a little bit and just tipping it around. Yeah, tiptoeing the McLaren through the middle sector, making sure it carries a nice little bit of speed as they head into the hairpin. You can see just how close he's getting to the Mustang through the slow speed, which is where it really struggles. The line difference still very apparent between the two. This time it's actually Steve who bring the line a little bit closer as we head into the right-hander, and Steve close, about 4 tenths between the two of them as they head up through Cheetah. Now the final corner, which I won't dare to try and pronounce, so that's just what I'm going to deem it now. As on the power, this is now, you'll just see the Mustang inch away, even though Steve has slipstream, and he's just done a 1:42.0. It's not going to be close enough for a move, so Steve will be getting a little bit frustrated, I'm sure, but he's just going to stay patient, continue to fight for this win. This is the person who also runs this league and this series, so yeah, Steve is just, you know, fighting for the win in his own series. How much more status do you need, really? It's yeah, I run the show and I'm quick. I can do two things at once, as Tash just giving me a little bit of insight here. Maddie doesn't have a lot of practice with the long stints in the Mustang. She might struggle with the tyre wear in the second half of the race. Yes, that is actually something Steve was telling me when I was talking to him while I was getting all set up here with the YouTubers. I saw a yellow flag, but I didn't see who it was for. Car number 9, is that? Yeah, Fleischmann. So we'll look at that in a moment. But yeah, Steve was telling me the Mustang struggles a lot in the dying stages of the race come the second half, as it was car number 9. Car number 9, Fleischmann. So we'll just see what happens here to the Lamborghini. Yes, I don't even think this was the cause of the initial yellow flags, actually, but I do think it was the cause of another set of yellow flags. This one was wide there, and yeah, there we go. Loops it on the exit in the wall, and that is why we saw yellow flags. Car number 9, Fleischmann, in the Lamborghini, picking up the throttle a bit too quickly, being a bit too ambitious, and it hasn't gone well for him. So now we continue with our leader. 7 tenths was the gap at some point during this previous lap, but it doesn't look like it as they head down into the first braking zone, and then the right-hand kink, and then braking into barbecue. Is there any other close battles going on? Oh, has Hoggy's actually gotten past Longy? That's twice now that I've missed these two switch places. So I'm just going to stay with them for a bit and see what happens. As Fleischmann will probably come into the pit lane to repair his damage, as we saw from the spin just a couple of moments ago. So heading through now Clubhouse corner, I think. I keep forgetting. I'm normally better at remembering corner names than this. Oh, Clubhouse Bend. Made that mistake twice now, but anyway. Now through the S's. So Hoggy is just obviously going to be controlling the pace of the Mustang pretty much through this middle sector and heading into the final sector, because this is just where the Ferrari is stronger than a Mustang. It's stronger through the high speed, the middle speed, and the slow speed, because the Mustang just doesn't like corners that much, especially slow speed though. But then when they go through and towards this corner here, when they're on the power, the Mustang closes the gap that it loses. And then as we head up through Cheetah, not even a break there from the Ferrari, whereas we do see a break from Longy. He still goes off. The Mustang pushing itself to the max, but that is very concerning and very, very close to being a huge moment there for Longy. But then again, now Longy will be on the power and gaining on the Ferrari as we head down towards turn number 2, or the actual turn number 1, I like to call it. And not close enough for a move, but definitely close to the Ferrari of Hoggy. We have seen them battling for a little while. Speed Racer is closing in on James Parker as they round the final corner. Like to see the gap between the two of them across the line. A 43.6 was his last lap, and now as he heads across the line, a 43.4. So getting a little bit quicker there. A speed race, and the McLaren coming into its own, maybe being a bit better on its tyres. But we have now been in this race for 40 minutes, and we have, well, nearly 40 minutes, and we have 31 minutes 40 seconds to go here, and it's still not over. Steve has actually dropped back to 1.1 seconds on Matty, who is just trying to open that car up, maybe not saving fuel at the same time, because Steve did tell me this is probably about when he's going to decide to save fuel, and Matty maybe is going to wait for a little bit later on. But now it's 5 tenths between the two of them, so maybe they're also just saving fuel at different points throughout the lap. But we are going to go back up to the lead fight between Steve Reese and Matty as they head through Cheetah. And oh no, lap traffic now. Who is this in the way? It is an Aston Martin of Mark_H. But now as they head down the straight, the Mustang got held up just a little bit clearly as Steve was able to close in 6 tenths in pretty much an instant. As we see Mark Witchell also in P18 in the background of the shot there, but not close enough for Steve Reese to try and make a move. But now this is very, very close between these two. This is crunch time. This is the final leg of the race. They haven't made pit stops, but once you hit that final 30 minutes after you've done 40, this is now when the tyres start dropping off, but you need to start pushing more at the same time, because this is now where the gloves slowly start to come off. And then when you reach the 20-minute mark, they're like halfway off, and then when you have 10 minutes to go, it's when they're completely off, and you battle as hard as you possibly can for a race win or any position that you are fighting for. But these two are already starting to push a little bit more, but their tyres getting ever worse at the same exact time. So this is interesting here between these two drivers. Steve hasn't been in the lead this entire race. He was alongside for a brief moment on lap 1, but nothing to make inroads, nothing that was able to get him a move done. But this is as close as he's been all race except for turn 1. I know I've said that a few times, but this time we just saw it. There was even an overlap on the exit of the hairpin. This is now where Steve needs to make a crucial decision to go for it or stay behind. I think he might try and actually go for it. This is definitely the closest he's been. They're separated by about 3 tenths at this very moment as they head through Cheetah. McLaren not even having to brake. Matty having to brake very hard. And now this is definitely the closest Steve has been since we were on lap 1. So now, as he gets on the throttle, and the Mustang will be faster, but surely he tries and make a move here as they head down through turn 1, and then the braking zone of turn 2. No, he isn't close enough, and Steve will be getting frustrated. He must have thought he had a move ready to go, and in the air fryer, but he wasn't able to, and the timer hasn't quite gone off yet for the move for the lead. But yeah, Steve definitely will be a bit frustrated at that one. He was so close, and now the gap has dropped to 6 tenths just because he was pushing that little bit harder. So he's probably just had to back off a little bit to protect his tyres, because that's the downside of a, well, not a downside, that's the interesting part of a race like this, plus them saving fuel. But you gotta really decide when to push, but then to save your tyres, to bring them back into line, you then have to ease it off a bit. Not much, but just a tiny bit. But Steve has had a brilliant run through the S's. He's right underneath the rear wing of that Ford Mustang, and he's going to make the lunge. He puts his nose on the inside, isn't able to get the move done, but Matty is now under serious pressure here from Steve Reese, who is now saying, thank you very much, but I want my lead back. Well, not back, but I want the lead now. I want to be leading here in Kyalami, here in this 70-minute Enduro. We are in South Africa, and I want to be the one with P1 next to my name. I have the fastest lap. I'm clearly the faster car. Now, I want my position. As they head now through the final corner at similar gaps to last lap. But now will we see a Steve who is willing to attack? On the throttle goes the McLaren, as 3 tenths was the gap across the line. What's it going to be? It's going to be 4 tenths, but in the slipstream, Steve is gaining for once in his life on a Mustang. He's still not close enough to go for a move, and it's super close between these two leaders. I can't take my eyes away for 1 second. Neither can you, the viewers who are watching this stream I'm hoping you're enjoying this just as much as I am. There's 27 minutes to go. It's still all to play for between a couple of cars, but this lead fight is truly enthralling at this stage. Steve is starting to finally get aggressive as they head through Sunset. This is where the McLaren is quicker. This is where we see him close in constantly on Matty as he's pushing so hard. He's even just tapping the grass there on the exit. A bit of dirt kicking up there in the aerodynamic wake of it as well from the splitter of that McLaren off the tyre. That's where it's going to pop up. But now, once again, Steve's super close. Not as close as he was last lap, though. I don't think we'll see him put his nose in at the hairpin. If he does, he's a madman. He does just stick his nose in a little bit, but then returns to the racing line. Matty takes a little bit more curb than Steve, who just completely goes around. That's the difference in these two cars. But Steve Reese pushing super, super hard now behind Matty. As I've said a few times, the gap is 3 tenths. So it just seems to be the recurring number between these two, who are giving it their all. These two leaders, the two people who are dominating out the front of all the others. 6.5 seconds is the gap from Steve Reese to Hoggy, as Steve makes a big mistake there. Out on the grass, the McLaren pushing just a little bit too hard, and the gap will be bigger than the previous lap. It was 4 tenths when they went across the line last lap. What's it going to be this lap? It's going to be probably 6 tenths, nearly 6 tenths, 584 milliseconds between the two of them, so Steve won't be close enough to go for a move. But 25 minutes to go. Now he started to be aggressive, and now the race really takes a turn. And the track is it's dwindling, but it's been about the same temperature, but it's gone up to 32 at some points, back down to 28, but right now it's sitting at 29 with 22 ambient temperature. That plays into account with your tyre wear as well. The cooler it gets, the less tyre wear you're going to have typically. So as we head through Sunset, now the braking zone into Clubhouse Bend. Now the S's. This is the section, as I've said a few times, where the McLaren is quicker. This is where Steve is fully committed. This is where he gains all the time he'll need to. And I think come a final lap battle, if he's behind, that is where he will try and just push and push and push. And it'll either go well for him or it won't. The S's can bite back at you no matter what car you're in because of the undulation. If you give it too much, it'll take it all away. But 4 tenths is the gap. It's a bit bigger than it normally is when they head into the third sector. But into the braking zone of the Crocodiles, and now up the hill towards Cheetah. McLaren once again better through here. As through the final corner, this is the closest Steve has been, so he's had a really good run through Cheetah, and now this is less than 4 tenths of a second, I'm sure of it. As they come across the line, it is just under 4 tenths. This is the most slipstream he's going to have had down to turn 1. Will he go for it? Will he try and make a late braking maneuver once again? No, he's just sitting behind. He's playing that patient game. But really, is this the patience you want to be displaying? I know that Matty could probably try and just get you back down the straight and probably will succeed in the matter, but surely you just want the lead for a moment just to show Matty that you're not here to mess around. But Matty knows that already, I'm sure. But as they now head through Sunset, look at how close behind. It's 2 tenths of a second between these two. Steve pushing so hard to no avail for a move for the lead, but surely if he gets through at the right point of the racetrack. Oh, as Matty goes off, this could be a huge moment here for the race. In the S's, the Mustang finally giving way. The tyres finally showing signs of death. Here as Steve makes a mistake by tapping that inside curve. The McLaren bouncing a bit. The gap actually coming out a bit instead of closing in like it was after Matty went onto the grass. But this is super close between these two. They're pushing each other to the raggedy edge of both of their cars. And now they're running towards lap traffic of Dave Ross. So hopefully he just pulls out of the way and causes no problems. 22 minutes to go. So we have seen a lot of racing. We've seen nearly 50 minutes of racing, as there's actually a battle up there as well. But this is the battle we have to stay with, because you never know when the lead is going to change in a battle that's so tense, in a battle that's so close with these two pushing each other. The lights have come on. It's getting darker here in Kyalami, and with 20 minutes to go, anything is possible. Steve still being the one chasing. He's been chasing tail for 50 minutes. And when will he make that move? is the question I think that's on all of our minds here in Fargone Racing GT Challenge Season 18. It is super close. This is one of the closer races I've ever witnessed, but I've never seen a car in P2 be so patient before as the lap car in front of them going off the track. Hopefully Dave Ross gets out of the way. Matty's are going to go up the inside here. Steve is going to try and follow as they head into Sunset. A little bit of difference there in the way they'd normally take the corner, and for that, Matty hit the inside grass. That's allowed Steve right up behind the Ford Mustang. This is closer than he was last lap. Matty went on the grass here last lap. Matty doesn't do it this time. But Steve, if he gets a good run through here, could find himself going for a move into the hairpin. He goes around that curb, but Matty just committing when she needs to. There's a couple of more back markers battling in front of them as well, so hopefully a battle doesn't affect their ability to get out of the way. But there's a few laps before these guys catch, I think maybe 1 or 2, because they aren't going super slow, those two, as it was about a similar gap here between those two last lap. But as we now head towards the Crocodiles, it's again Steve 5/10-ish the gap, and every time he gets super close he just falls away again, and I don't know if he's deliberately lifting off or he's just not quite able to get the pace down when it really matters. But as we head into the final corner, Steve again right underneath the rear wing of that Ford Mustang. But once again, as we head onto a straight, we won't see a move, I'm sure, but Steve in the slipstream will just be thinking of when he's going to go for a move as we head down through the turn 1 kink. Steve is actually very close. Will he commit to a move? Will he make that lunge? No. But that is definitely the closest he's been at turn 1 through all the laps. If I was in his shoes, I definitely would have made that lunge, but he knows better. He has experience. He's not new to this whole racing thing, clearly. Neither is Matty. So Matty probably would have seen that move coming from a kilometre away. But as we head through into Sunset again, literally in the sunset this time, as the lights come on, one of the lap cars getting out of the way. What about the Aston? No, it's still a little bit further up the road. Steve Rees again as they head through Clubhouse Bend. This is where he gains the time. I've said this plenty of times, but again, he's just not able to make that lunge. He's not able to make a move, and again he hits that little inside curve, loses a bit of minimum speed, but Steve is very close. This is the closest he's been into the hairpin. He pulls to the left-hand side, and he goes to the inside. Matty actually has to leave space this time, and now will Steve try and get this one done? He thought about it. He really did, but he knew he couldn't commit as late as he wanted to under the brakes. He didn't want to hit the Ford Mustang. He didn't want to get a penalty. This is now his crunch time. He is so close. So close. And surely he has to make a move soon. Surely he can't stay behind for another 19 minutes of racing here at Kyalami. He's playing this as slow as he possibly can, but he's still going. He's still pushing here. With 20 minutes to go, neither of these two have let up, but Matty looking a little bit weaker than she has recently. The tyres clearly going off, and she's just making more and more mistakes, and Steve is seeing that. He's trying to capitalise, but he cannot get close enough, as this is nail-biting action here in South Africa, and it is becoming nighttime as we continue on. It probably won't become pitch black, but it is getting cooler. The track is now dropped to 27, and that plays a part. More of a part than you might think if you aren't a racer who's watching. 27 degrees definitely makes your tyres a little bit lower on pressure if you haven't pumped them up in prediction for this, but I doubt you would have. But they will still probably be in that optimal range as they were pushing in the hotter conditions earlier, and it takes a little bit more than a couple of degrees track temp for them to drop. It just takes a couple of degrees for them to struggle to get up to temp. So as long as they keep their pressure, they should stay in that optimum window. But these two really giving it everything, and this actually becomes easier on the tyres as Matty runs wide, makes a mistake under braking. Steve is right alongside now, as he actually had half a nose alongside there. He's very close as we head towards the flat out compression. The McLaren once again giving it everything, but once again Steve just not close enough as they head into the Crocodiles and then up the hill towards Cheetah. Matty running wide again, and this is now where you really see the Mustang's weakness. It isn't just slow speed corners, it is tyres. We've been seeing it lap after lap after lap. Matty running wider and wider and wider and struggling more and more, and after 30 laps this is now where the tyres are really starting to give out, as Steve is right up behind The Mustang, will he finally go for a move? It's less than 3/10, it's 2.5 as he's right underneath the rear wing. Surely this is where he goes for a move. Again, no he doesn't. And again, you've got to be wondering what's going through his head. He's playing this more patiently than Fernando Alonso. In F1, he plays games so patiently there. And Steve is being even more patient. This is a nail-biter here between these two. With 16 minutes to go, we've nearly had 60 minutes of this race. And we continue on wondering who will take the flag first. But we still got 16.5 more minutes of racing action to find that answer out. The wind has slightly moved directions. That doesn't affect a GT3 car much though, but once again, these two just so close together through this section of racetrack. And you've got to wonder if Steve is actually lifting off. I've said that once before, but just look at how close behind he gets. And he actually does put his nose up the inside, and he is going to make that lunge. They are wheel to wheel. They rub doors, and this is the most crucial point in this race. This is now Steve finally going for a move for the win as they head towards the compression. Who's going to be the most committed? Flat out on the inside, flat out on the outside. Matty will have the inside for the Crocodiles. Will Steve be able to get it done the long way round? No, he tries to cut back underneath as they head up towards Cheetah. And that was the first time Steve went fully side by side since lap 1, turn 1. But it wasn't enough. And once again, he slots in behind the Mustang. But he's going for it at the hairpin. That's why we're not going to see him go for it at turn 1. Maybe we will this lap. This is even closer than last time. They are only 2/10 apart. Steve right underneath Matty now for the lead of this race. Will he go for it under braking? Once again, no. We know where his hunting spot is now. We know where he wants this move. He wants it done at the hairpin. He thinks that's his best choice. I don't know if I agree with that considering the straight that follows, but this is now where he's going to start to fight. The gloves are fully off here. 15 minutes exactly left to go on the clock here in Fargone Racing GT Challenge, and we are still clueless as to who's going to win. It'll be one of these two as long as they don't make contact, which I don't want to curse. But this is a nail-biter. This truly is a photo finish. And there's still 15 minutes to go, and I'm saying it's a photo finish because it is just that close here. These two have been battling from start to finish, sometimes bridging over a second, but normally within 6/10 of each other. But for the past few laps, it's been always under 5/10, and Steve not close enough this time around at the hairpin. But he's committing. He's really going for it. And you can see it. You can see that McLaren just wobbling around the corners, just pointing its nose in. We'll go on board here. A pure on board here. I won't talk for the rest of the final sector and the first sector between these two. So, as they finish the first sector, the gap is 4/10, and there's a bit of lap traffic there, which compromised Matty and Steve Cerese's entry to Sunset, but it compromised them both pretty similarly. The GTR just getting out of the way, and that is, I think it's, no, it's not Mark Witcher's, I don't think. I'm not sure. What car number is that? It is car number 12, so that is Exiled Reaper. They are lapping quite a lot of the field. These two are in a class of their own, 6.5 seconds from P3, but Steve Reese still trying to close in ever more here on Matty. As we've been seeing, this has been the trend since about 5 laps ago, since about lap 28. They have been always within 6/10 of each other. It's never bridged out since that point, and these two giving it everything. The Mustang's tyres dwindling by a thread. They will get to the end though. The question is, have both of these guys saved enough fuel, or not both of these guys, both of these drivers saved enough for the end. Have they saved enough fuel? I pointed it out earlier, but both of these two needed to save a bit of fuel, Steve told me, but I think, considering how hard they're pushing, they have definitely saved enough fuel. They are going flat out here in the dying stages. We have 11 minutes 50 seconds to go. It has been a thrilling race, and it's not going to stop being a thrilling race unless one of them makes a crucial mistake, which I don't think we'll see. These two are in a league of their own. They're super comfortable. They're not getting complacent. They're always pushing, always checking their mirrors, always knowing there's a threat of the car behind them going for a move, and Steve has his eyes completely forward, looking at the tail lights of that Mustang, and he has been since lap 1. It's been 34 laps of staring at the back of a big V8 Mustang. Surely he'll be wanting him to move past. Surely he wants to see it in his mirrors soon enough. He really is going to have to wring the neck out of it, though. Trying to overtake a Mustang is like trying to overtake an F-18 fighter jet when you're in a World War II little prop plane. It is super difficult because the Mustang in a straight line is so much faster. It is incredible. It's like a road car versus a Formula 1 car, but not through the corners. The Mustang sliding around every single corner, and it's interesting to see, and it's interesting to wonder whether Matty can hold off Steve, but Steve has dropped back a little bit. The gap has now finally gone outside 7 tenths for the first time since lap 28. It is 8.5 tenths, but Steve probably just backing off a bit, but the tyres on that Mustang must be extremely secondhand. I don't know if Matty can hold Steve Reese off for another 10 minutes. It's the question we've all been dying to find out since the start of the race, but this battle has just not let off. I haven't had time to look at another driver, given nobody's even close enough. This is pretty much the only on-track battle going on, but this has just been so thrilling to watch between these two, and I don't think, as I said multiple times, it's going to end. Steve just pushing it to the limit. The McLaren definitely has better tyres at this stage. The white and black McLaren has been chasing tail for 35 laps, and can you just imagine the what-if question? What if he had been the one ahead by turn 3? What if he got ahead when they went into barbecue? I think that we would see something very similar, but the reverse way around. But Steve is actually dropping off here. He's lost a second, and Matty pulling away here. Matty doesn't have the tyres, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe Steve hadn't saved fuel until this point. Maybe he didn't expect to be having to push so hard. We'll have to find out. Or is the McLaren also falling off its tyres? That's historically not how the McLaren is, though. Normally it's better on its tyres than a Ford Mustang. But 8 tenths is now the gap. He is closing in through that middle sector still, but the final sector, this is where the final sector into the first bit of the first sector is where the Mustang is stronger. It is where it's stronger than the McLaren. But then corners like this, like Cheetah, the McLaren closes in constantly, but they're both on the grass there, as Steve is closing in though, as we head round the final corner, and we head towards the second corner of Crowthorne. These two never stop pushing in, and now is 7 tenths once more, just like every lap from 28 to 34. These two never letting up. They're not blinking, I can imagine. They're probably nearly forgetting to breathe at certain points. They're pushing that hard. They are just purely focused at this point. Steve Reese has a tough mountain to climb though. We've seen it. Past 36 laps, he's been pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, and it's not been enough to get past the Ford Mustang. The Ford Mustang pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing, but it has been enough. But now, when the tyres come into their own, Steve is closing. He has been closing for laps and laps and laps. But now Matty is just relying on that big V8 engine under the bonnet of that Ford Mustang GT3 car. And that's what's so spectacular about the Ford versus McLaren theme that we always see in ACC, at least for the most part. It's always these two cars fighting to be the fastest normally, even with your custom LFM BOP that we do run here in Fargone Racing, and most other ACC leagues also run. It is one very big factor as if to which car you're running. It is normally be fighting up the front are going to be one of these two cars, and depending on the track, a Lamborghini can get in the mix like at Silverstone, but these two cars are the best two cars, and they have the two best drivers in Fargone, at least at Kyalami, in them, and behind the wheel. The gap is very small. It's within 5 tenths. Once again, it's 3.5 tenths. Steve Reese, we know, doesn't go for moves at turn 1. We might see that change now that we only have 6 and a bit minutes to go. We have seen nearly 70 minutes of racing. It is 70 minutes of Kyalami. It's been a long enduro sprint round, and it's still not over. So, through sunset, we have seen 64 sorry, 64 minutes of racing. Yeah, as fam saying the same thing that I've been saying for a long time now. Yeah, it's going to be very difficult for Steve to get a move done while he's in the McLaren, but he's going to have to make something work. They are approaching lap traffic again. We're going to go to Helicam. We have it for a little while. These two giving it everything that they can. Always, always, always. They never stop. And I'm repeating myself because that is how much they are pushing. I know I've repeated myself. I've probably said the same sentence a few times, but honestly, it's just because it's true. They are pushing themselves to the limits. These are two sim racers pushing themselves to the best of their abilities, and they are showing it. 7.6 seconds to P3. These two are in a league of their own. As Fam saying that Steve is probably waiting for Matty to run out of fuel. I don't think so, because Steve told me that they both had to fuel save a very similar amount. They both used pretty much the same amount of fuel, and they both would have already been saving fuel, which is why we saw that little dead stage between lap 10 and lap 20-ish, so they were just going a little bit slower. I think they already saved the fuel. It's now about tyres. I think Matty has already run out of tyres, but as blue flags getting not really in the way there, but Steve Reese definitely closing in as we have less than 5 minutes to go here in Kyalami to finish your round 2. As Steve actually sticking a nose in there through Clubhouse Bend and now into the S's. Steve is now starting to realise he might have waited too long to go for a move. He had a couple opportunities at turn 1 to just lunge it under brakes. He was only a tenth or two behind, and he definitely could have gone for it, but I think he played a little bit too patient in my personal opinion. We'll have to see if it works out for him in the end, but definitely now he is getting desperate. He's poking his nose in every chance he gets, and with 4 minutes to go, it's still anybody's game between these two. 5 tenths was the gap at the end of the middle sector as they go through the final sector. This is where it's a bit of a mix. They're pretty equal through this sector, the McLaren and the Mustang. But then you head onto the straight where the Mustang is completely clear as they head through Cheetah. Once again, both of them sticking a tyre in the dirt, pushing as hard as they can, and both of their tyres going off. And these two will never stop fighting. Not until the end of this race. Not until the flag falls. There's 3.5 minutes to go here. Probably 2 laps to go, I would imagine, because minute 40, yeah. About 2 laps to go, so this might very well be the penultimate lap here in round 2. The enduro round. 70 minutes have nearly finished. And this is still the battle we look on. Matty versus Steve Reese. As now head through sunset. I feel like a broken record repeating the same sentences, so I'm not going to say the same thing I've said in this sector for like the past 20 years, it feels like. More like 20 laps, but, you know, exaggeration is always fun, but Steve, super quick. So is Matty. So, heading into the final sector once more. These two, 5/10 between the two of them. I think maybe Steve doesn't have much left in the tank. Neither does Maddie, obviously, but I don't know if Steve has enough to attack. We've seen him attack a few times, but since his last attacking effort, he has not been close enough. He has not been able to get up to Maddie and make a move, but maybe I'm about to eat my own words. He doesn't wobble off the final corner, but what is the gap across the line? It's going to be probably 4/10, 5/10, so that little wobble definitely hurt him. He was right underneath that Mustang. Still the slipstream helping him out just a little bit. They have lap traffic again in front of them, but this will not be the final lap, I don't think, actually. This is definitely the penultimate lap. They had a minute 41 going into turn 1, so this lap won't be the last one, but this is the penultimate lap here in GT Challenge Season 18, Round 2 Kyalami, and it'll actually be more like 71.5 minutes or 71 minutes 40 seconds, because they are going to go just a little bit over time here, because it is when the flag hits 0, and it won't do on this lap. A minute 7 seconds to go until the timer hits 0. There's less than a minute 7 seconds to go here in Kyalami, as the track temp has been very, very stable since about lap 30. It has been 22 degrees ambient, 27 degrees track. The wind has picked up 1 kilometer an hour, but that is basically nothing in a big, heavy GT3 car. But the gap is expanding. Maddie has 9/10 on Steve Reese, and I wonder where Maddie's pulling that pace from. It's now 8/10. Maddie looked like she was almost down and out. It looks like her tyres were completely gone, but maybe her tyres weren't gone. She was just waiting to use them, as we are now heading on to the final lap. This is the penultimate corner of the penultimate lap, and we now have one more lap to decide your race winner, everyone. Steve Reese versus Maddie. We've been watching on board with them since, or off board with them since roughly lap 25, and now this is the final lap of the race to decide the winner. It looks like it's going to go Maddie's way, but you never know with Steve in that McLaren pushing as hard as he possibly can. Maddie pushing as hard as she can, and it all comes down to this one. They have a lapped car in front of them. It is Speed Racer who is in front of them, and now surely Steve is gonna close up. Surely Steve has to close up. This is the last place where the McLaren will be quicker. This little sector here, it's where he's been quicker all race long, but he hasn't taken advantage of it. Will he be able to close up? It doesn't look like it's close enough at all. We've seen him be so much closer in previous efforts. The gap was a second at the end of the final sector, and he's not closing enough. Maddie makes a slight mistake, but so does Steve Reese here, and it looks like it's going Maddie's way after a very nail-biting basically a nail-biting 41 laps where these two haven't been separated by anything. Now they are starting to separate, as the gap is 9/10, and what I thought was going to be an absolute photo finish, but this is the final sector of the lap, and Steve will have to pull out one mighty sector. It does look like Maddie's slowing up a bit. The gap is 6/10, so maybe she is out of fuel, but I think it's going to be enough. It's going to go Maddie's way, as they have 2 more corners to negotiate, and unless she completely runs out of fuel to the line, this is going to go the way of Maddie, who makes a massive mistake. But she is going to round the final corner unless Steve has a massive run to the line and that Mustang is out of fuel. It's going to be Maddie, after a long 41 laps, who takes the victory in round 2 at Kyalami. And after a long 70 minutes, it is Maddie's way, followed by Steve Reese. 4.5 tenths across the line. These two had a titanic battle. Steve won't be disappointed, but he might be, but I doubt he'll be disappointed with how hard he had to fight. But the Mustang's too quick in a straight line, once again showing why it is just impossible to overtake it, and Steve was never able to get close enough. But Hoggy beats out Longy by 4 seconds. Gunther Rowe is going to pick up your P5. Then you have Eda Nick, who gets your P6. Then you have Blocks P7, Parker P8, Perkins P9, Speed Racer P10, Demon Boost P11, Exiled Reaper P12, Swooper P13, Tovasaya P14, Dave Ross gets P15 in the Ford Mustang. Then you have Mark Witchell, who unexpectedly pulled into the pit lane in the earlier stages of the race, gets P16 by only 4 tenths. So that was also a close battle that I didn't quite catch. And then you have Mark_H, who was 2 laps behind, picking up the P17 and still driving around the track. But what a blockbuster finish that was here in Kyalami. What a 70-minute race it was. What an enduro round it was. There's so many words I could use to describe what we've just watched, but I think the one word I'd have to use is incredible. It was sensational how hard those front 2 were pushing, and that is your official final result with Fleischmann 17 laps behind. The final 3 of Fleischmann, MJ, and Chriso weren't able to finish the race. In fact, Chriso only got about 4 laps done before he had to call it in the pit lane. But it's a good race as we will return to garage. And now that is your final order. We will go to the timetable and I'll just scroll up and down it. But yeah, Maddie fought so hard, so did Steve Reese, and you got to give hats off to both of them. They never let up once over the 42 lap 70-minute race. 71 minutes and 32 seconds is actually your final run time, so I was about right with 71.5 minutes. So yeah, that was a brilliant race, and I'm sure won't be the last time I'll be here in the comms box. Thank you for having me, Fargone Racing. It was a sensational race, and I thank you for having me.
Green light. Go, go, go.
I'll just quickly chuck a Discord link in. Yep, there you go. There's a Discord link if you want to join the ASA Discord and race in a bunch of leagues, but this is also where Fargone runs its operations, where it runs its proceedings, so feel free to join that Discord link I just put in the chat. Thank you for the race, thank you for having me, Fargone Racing, and I'll see you again for next race. I'm more than sure if I am available, which I believe I am. So until then, have a good night, everyone. Yeah, thank you for having me, and good night.